Let's get started with the financial status, the very first output that we'll be building. So let's head right over to the Excel model. So here we are in the Excel model, and as you can see, this chart has three main inputs. So the first two are the balances and the available overdraft facility, and the third one are the due external payments. The available liquidity and the free liquidity are just calculations from these three inputs. So let's walk through this and I'll show you where this is coming from. The balances are coming from this tab here, accounts. As you can see, this is the sum of the balances of these first two count accounts. The reason we do not include the third one is because that's actually an overdraft facility. So here we will look into the balance and the line value and calculate the difference, which gives us some 975 in available overdraft facility. We will sum these up to get the available liquidity. And then actually the main part of the work here is to calculate the due external payments. So they are coming from this table in which I prepare the payables. Well, I split them into external and intercompany and also into non-deferred and deferred. So let's also check out where this is coming from. Non-deferred payables are coming from this table. This is actually an output you can think of from the ERP system, so you may have asked the accounting department to provide you with this. And well, here in yellow I highlighted the columns that I added to this, so that in case we get an update on this, which is likely to happen in a liquidity plan, we know where to watch out for if, well, there are structural changes in these first input columns. Other than that, I think these are the main inputs, so we can get started with putting this together. So the first part is actually pretty simple. So let's just get those balances from the accounts tab. For the available overdraft liquidity, we need to go there as well. Get this balance, subtract the line, which gives us some 975 in available overdraft facility. Sum these up. And here we go. Now, in case you're wondering how this is working, that I click into a cell and it takes me to the source of that cell. Well, you can set it up in the options and advanced. And here you have allow editing directly in cells, and you need to turn that off. So if you turn that on, you can, well, by clicking into a formula or something like that, edit it. But if you turn it off, it will just take you to the source like here. And I think that's more useful because you could as well just edit the formulas over here. Now let's calculate these due external payments. And to do that, let's head right over to the In Payments tab, where we have the input data. So the thing here is we should process that a bit first. So a few things to note include that the supplier name is actually always up here, which is not that useful. It would be much better if we just had it right next to the data. Other than that, well, here you can see the currency. It's US dollars. This, well, course is primarily, or it's taught in euros, so to say, if you will. So we should convert that. And other than that, it would also be useful to have an intercompany flag as a column here, so that we see for each entry if it's coming from an intercompany relationship or not. So let's build this. You may have noted that there's actually one thing right next to the supplier here that could be useful, and that's an ID. We have that down here as well, and here as well. So why not make use of this? If we put those IDs right next to the data here, we could in fact use them to look up the supplier name. So the idea would be here to write a formula that identifies the one here, checks this one against this one, and then does a lookup on column B to get the very first entry. So let's do this. And as a first step, and this is, by the way, a trick a partner once showed to me, and I really liked it, and that's why it's included in this course, of course. We should only select the blanks so that we do not include this 2 here, for example, because I don't want to override it. Actually, I need it as an input in this formula as we'll just see. So let's go to special and then select the blanks only. Here we go. It's also up here if you want to access it like that. And then we can get this. And please make sure to hit Control Enter, not just Enter. If you only hit Enter, you will need to do this again because it will fuck up the column, kind of. So, well, give it a try if you like, but it's best to just hit Control Enter because this will paste everything in a relative way. So now we get those ones up here, then the twos and so on here. And that's just what we've been looking for, so that now we can write an index match formula or to get something from column B like this. And I'll be looking up this one in this column, looking for an exact match. Here we go. So let's, no, not like this, like this. Paste this formula here to the very end. And as you can see, we always get the supplier right next to our data in a column, just what we need. The next thing we need is an intercompany flag. So we want to know for each of these contractors, is this an intercompany contractor, yes or no? And to do that, well, let me show you how I did this here in the final version. I came up with this array that I will check against from the config tab. So I will just get this, put in the values, paste in the formats. Here we go. And I'll also give a name to this array. So I will call this CASIC, constant array of strings, intercompany. Hit enter, and now I can refer to this range by this name. Where are we? Here we are. Not there yet. We'll get there later. So let's put in that formula here. And there are many ways to do this. This is just one way I kind of like because it's a bit special. So because I'm looking up an array in a single cell, so CASIC is in fact 3 by 1. And I will look this up in this single cell 1 by 1. Which will lead the result to spill over. But we can take care of this because, well, we need to compare those 3 entries from the config tab actually with here, this contractor. And the idea here would be to go with a 1 if it's a match and to go with a 0 if it's not a match, and then sum this up. And this will just return 0 or 1 in the end. However, let's first take care of these errors. So I will go with a 0 if there's an error, which gives me 3 zeros here because we don't have a match. I will sum this up and squeeze this into a single cell. Let's do it like this. And check, for example, for Fung, one of the intercompany relationships, if this worked out. And as you can see, here we have those ones. Now, one thing to mention here as well is that I'm using a wildcard character here at the very end, so this asterisk. And the reason I'm doing this is because, well, sometimes you cannot be quite sure if it's Fung Limited Company or Fung LLC or Fung LLC and a blank at the very end. So data, especially text data, tends to be messy. And that's why I'm using this wildcard character here. Obviously, this is a trade-off, so I introduced the risk of identifying some false positives here. But, well, it's just something you can use to provide a bit more flexibility. In the end, you just need to make sure that you get what you need to get and don't get anything that you shouldn't get. The last thing here we need are, well, the euros, so the currency conversion, as this is coming in US dollars. So I will just do this. Let's get this from the exchange rates tab over here. Well, we should look that up in here, but just as a second argument, go with an exact match. Go right back here in that formula. And then we need to check against the currency column. By the way, Excel then puts in here the worksheet name, so we can remove that, we don't need it. And this gives us the conversion factor. So we need the amount as well. Multiply this, and here we go. So let's paste this till the very end. And well, as you can see, there's a small error though down here. So yeah, we should somehow take care of this. For the totals, we should especially make sure that, well, we zero them out, because we do not want to consider anything twice in here. So as these are come with errors and we want to exclude all of these rows anyway, let's do the following. Let's use an if error statement and put in a 0 if there's an error. Just like this. And another thing is the number format, so I don't quite like this. I'll go to the final version and get an appropriate number format. So by pressing Ctrl+1, you can access this, and you can go to custom, paste in the code. And here we go. So this is coming with 2 decimal places. I don't think that's necessary usually, so usually I just go with 1, but here in the input tab it's really not that important, so let's stick to that for the moment. One more thing we should do is, well, highlight these columns in yellow, for example, because if we ever get an update to this payables tab, and that will definitely happen because it's a liquidity plan and you will probably update this every other week from now on, well, we should just know which columns came from us and which from the client. So next time we get those columns A through G, let's hope there were not any structural changes, but we need to make sure that columns H through J are still working, and if there have been any major changes to the input data, that may not be the case. So it's just best to highlight this. Now for the receivables, it just works the same way, so I don't think I need to show you this right now, so I will just get this, and we will move on with the next step. So here we go, I just took care of the receivables. And actually another thing that I wanted to show to you is that if you go into a formula and select a part of it and then hit the F9 key, well, you can evaluate that formula or that part of the formula right here. So you can see what it gets you, and in this case, well, this is the comparison to check for the intercompany relationship, and it returns 2 times an A and then a 1. And the reason for that is that over here, well, the first 2 checks don't work out, Fungentura, but OF wholesale works out. And that's why we get this 1 as a third entry when we check against OF wholesale. So we want to show those payables on a weekly timeline. As you can see up here, we will split them into external payables and intercompany payables. And each of these categories will split again into non-deferred and deferred. There's also a check down here, which I will show you how to put together. And the most important thing in the end is this cell, so this contains the due external payables, some 3.2 million, that we will use then in the financial status. One thing that I want to show you up here in the timeline is that for the starting Sunday, I'm actually using a constant. And the reason I'm doing this is because, well, this timeline obviously is on a lot of sheets in this workbook. And if we want to shift that when we do updates to this liquidity plan, I don't want to go through each of the worksheets and update this. I mean, I could use multi-sheet selection or something like that, sure, but it's usually just easier to put in the start date as a constant and then use formulas here. And we'll just use this here from the config tab. So as you can see here, it's coming from here. So that's an easier way to do this. Let's also introduce the first formula that we'll be using to look up the external non-deferred payables from this table actually here that we just prepared. And to do that, we will use the SUMIF statement. So You may be familiar with SUMIF and SUMIF statement. SUMIF is really just a generalization, and the main reason we use it is for consistency. So even if you only have one criteria range, you still want to use SUMIFs. And the reason for that is, well, SUMIF without an S starts as a first argument with the criteria range and not the sum range, and this can just easily get confusing. So it's just best practice to start with the sum range and thus use SUMIFs. Now here we have multiple arguments in here. We have the sum range, of course, at first. So we will make sure to get this column here, amount euro. Then next we have the date check. So we want to make sure that we get all those values after the Monday in that week, but before that Sunday in that week, but including the boundaries. So if a value is on that Monday or Sunday, we will include it as well. Other than that, we want to make sure that we get internal or external payables. So here the zeros are IDs. Well, to get external payables, we also introduced that over here in this column. Other than that, what do we have? We will want to make sure that in column B, we don't get those totals here. And actually, that's something that we already took care of by, well, introducing this formula. But, well, let's put it in there as well so it won't hurt. And then finally, we have this currency conversion. So this allows us to, well, bring euros to K euros. One last thing that may need some explanation is this zero up here. So as you can see, I put it in as a very first date kind of. And the reason I did this is because here I want to get all of the new payables, which turn out to be all payables on or before, well, Sunday, December 29th, 2023. And the zero just takes care of this because it's kind of the very first date there is in Excel. So let me show you something. I'll just put in 45,000 and, well, I guess I already formatted this as a short date. And it turns out to be, well, March 15, 2023. And that's because when I put in a zero here, it will give me the 0th of January 1900. And that's because Excel internally treats dates as integers and starts counting, well, at that very day. So let's start building this. I just got from the final version a copy of the formats of the column widths and, well, the values. That is some of them. Here, actually up here, I copied the formulas, well, because here I'm using these to build a timeline. And the most important thing, of course, here for us right now is to get a starting date right. So let's head over to the config tab, put in that variable name, give it a value that's December 29th, 2023. Let's put in a short description, define this. So you can do this right here. Alternatively, you can go to the name manager, click new, put in that name and do it like that. So we can reduce this here, constant integer start date, remove the fill, here we go. And well, now we can actually get that formula from the final version. I'll just copy this in here. There's one more thing we need to define, and that's here, this constant at the very end, which is not already defined in here, so let's do that. It will just be, well, 0.001 to divide by 1000. Let's define this. And let's head back here. I'll get a formula again. Here we go, let's hit enter, and this works. Well, actually, I don't think I will explain this again because I already did. So let's just copy this over here. And this gives us, well, all the non-deferred payables so far. The next thing we need are the deferred payables, and we can just get them from this tab here. Down here we have the totals. So let's look up these values. The first lookup array is this one here for the intercompany flag. And the second one is up here for the week numbers. well, make sure to, well, leave some space here at the very beginning for the first argument. And in this case, that's, well, 0 for the intercompany flag. Let's properly dollar it and remove this prefix, well, the worksheet name, because we don't need it here. And let's here go with, well, this value, dollar it, remove that, and here we go. So I can also just copy this and copy it again down here. Here we go. And now the last thing we really just need to do is to sum this up. Also in here, get the total, so that will just be the sum of, well, the external and the intercompany payables, like that. And here we almost go. So just a word of explanation here. What we just did was we got the external and the intercompany payables on a weekly base. And, well, here we are first getting the non-deferred payables, are subtracting the deferred part of it, which then gives us the payables as such. Now there's one last thing to do down here, and that's the check. So why not check against the source of the deferred payments? I'll just show you why. Well, let's get this total here, right? And that's something we will look up based on the week. Let's do it like this. Here we go. And we'll just subtract this, what we calculated just here. And, well, thankfully it turns out to be the same, so this seems to have worked. And the reason I'm doing this is because, well, I'm getting these totals here. So these are not split by, well, external or internal. And what we did over here was that we got those deferred payables, well, split, so by external and intercompany. And now I'm kind of, well, reintegrating these two down here. And now the idea is just to, well, check if what was broken apart when put together again is just the same as it was before. And that turns out to be the case down here, because the checks are always equal to 0. Now remember the financial status? So actually we were looking for due external payments, as you can see here, and it turned out that we just calculated them. Right here, these 3.2 million due external payables, and we can just get them right now over here in our financial status, calculate the free liquidity by taking the available liquidity and subtracting the external payments. So this gives us some minus 1.5 million. And that's basically it for the financial status. So the next thing we can do is just build a chart that I showed on the very first slide in the beginning of this video, and put a couple of comments next to that slide, and then that's already it. So let's build a chart. Before we do that, however, let's go with another short table here that is in million euros, so not K euros, but million euros. Actually, throughout the entire model, also in the integrated business plan, I use K euros and not million euros. But for the chart, it's just better if we go with million euros. So here, let's just get these values. I will not do anything fancy here, no lookup or anything like that. Just get these values and divide them by 1,000. And now, well, actually, you're lucky if you have Excel. I think it's just much better for charts than PowerPoint and Excel or Microsoft Office in general. If you don't have that, however, I'll just do this here in, well, Excel as well. It starts with the totals, so here you need to set those as totals. In Excel, you can go with an E, and that will total the values that you got so far. But here it needs to be done like this. Well, let's remove the chart title. Also, I don't like to have these around here from the legend. I'll do that differently in PowerPoint. And now we have this. Also, let's remove those lines here. Anything else we need to do? Well, size. It's important that all your charts have the same size. so that they look consistent in PowerPoint. So I think I'm going for something like 4.13 and 8.04, something like that. And yeah, let's remove here the shape outline. Looks much better without it, I think. Other than that, let's go with font size that we can also read in PowerPoint. So I'm not sure why this is set to 18 and it's so small. Here we go, much better. And besides that, well, let's zoom out a bit here. Yeah, now it looks about the same size as over in PowerPoint. Let's move these actually. So I think it's here from a data label to the center. Well, yeah, it looks here. Actually, thing I don't like as much is, well, the due external payments, and that's because they have the wrong sign. So turns out we need to multiply this with -1 here. And well, obviously now this is wrong, but let's just go with the sum here, which still gives us those 1.5 million. But here to properly build a chart, we need to have this as a negative number. So let's do it like that. And that's almost it. So, well, let's go with some colors that are a bit more in line with our theme over in PowerPoint. I'm just getting the color code so this looks consistent. Go with more colors, custom hex. If you want to be precise about something like that, just do it like that. Also these, I think I use right here. Then I use gray here. Let's look that up here. Get this hex code. I think it should be the same as this, but I can't multi-select them with hitting Control. So we need to do it like this. And like this. And I think here I use the shade of red for that, which is not actually coming from this color scheme. So let's look that up as well. It's this red here. Let me select that. Or fill colors, here we go. And then we are almost done. Colors. Here we go. So I think this looks pretty much like what we are looking for. Let me check if there's anything I forgot. Well, no, I don't think so. Maybe just the color of the font, which is, well, let's check what we have here. Yeah, I think I went with a light gray, so let's put in some 50s here. Well, not in here, though. And I think that should be pretty much it. So when you compare this chart with this chart, I think they are quite the same. So finally, we want to use our chart in PowerPoint. So let's just do that and head over to the PowerPoint deck. Here I usually paste those charts as enhanced meta files, as these scale quite well. So this is a vector graphic. You can make it any size and it will still be sharp. That's a good thing. A thing I don't like though is that this chart apparently has a white background, which is totally unnecessary. So let's remove that again and head over to our Excel file and set the background to no fill. Copy that chart again. Enhanced meta file. Let's see if this has the same dimensionality. I think I use 413 and 804. Okay, I need to go back once more because this doesn't come with the right dimensionality. Let's go here and check that. Actually, I thought I had already put it to the right size. So let's check here, 804. And here we go. I think that should be it. Yeah, so now you could just align top and align left, and then you'd have that chart. Actually, I think here I'm using a bit of a different font size, and but at the same time it's bold, but it really doesn't matter that much. Eventually we get a chart. Now for the comment on the right hand side, I don't think we can write that at the moment because we are just about to set up the liquidity model and we don't have any information on factoring at this point in time yet. So let's do that later. What I would like to point out about the financial status, however, is that, well, as you can see from the chart, this really doesn't look good. So it depends on your local jurisdiction, but usually you should be able to serve at least 90% of your due external payments. And if you can't, well, then you may have something like 3 weeks to fix that problem. If you can't, you will need to file for insolvency. And usually insolvency lawyers, they'll also come up with a retrospective on your liquidity situation, so they will really identify the point in time at which your business went into insolvency. And if they find out that you didn't properly take care of this, even though you knew that there was a problem, this can be a huge problem for you. So even if you are running a limited company, for example, you may be held accountable for this personally as a CEO, for example. And that's why you really want to make sure that you, always are in the know about your liquidity situation and don't get into any trouble.